Hey everybody, this is Justin from Justin Talks Puppets, where we talk puppets, Muppets, and so much more. Today we have a very special guest, and before we let him kind of say hello to everybody, I would like to introduce him. Be talking with and chatting with all things puppets with Steve Troop, who is a puppeteer and cartoonist. Steve has created Maybury Melonpool, who has been drawing and puppeteering the Little Spaceman ever since. As a cartoonist, he was one of the first people to start posting a comic a day online. His webcomic Melonpool ran for 10 years from 1996 to 2005, predating the word webcomic. Steve currently makes his living as a puppet designer and puppeteer in Los Angeles. He's the co-owner of Puppet Design Studio. As a puppeteer, designer, and a builder, Steve has worked for such TV shows as Glee, Teen Titans Go, and so much more, as well as several commercials, videos, and anything else that requires puppets, including Ed Sheeran's MTV Music Award-winning video Sing in 2014, and so much more. Please welcome the multi-talented, the one, the only, Steve Troop.
Hello. Boy, I need to update my bio. I've done a little bit more since then.
My bad. See,
No.
That's on me. That's on me.
Well, it also helps that I haven't actually touched that website in probably 10 years.
Hey, it's still a lot. It's still a lot. So for you to say that you've done so much more it's a laundry list. It's a laundry list.
Thank you.
Steve, did anything that I missed that you want to fill people in?
Probably the biggest thing I have right now is that there's a T-Mobile commercial with Zach Braff and Donald Faison.
Yeah.
And where they're singing Holiday Road. And I built the puppets for that that video, that thing. There's a part where they do ventriloquist dummies, and if you blink, you'll miss them. But yeah.
Hey, you need puppets in T-Mobile commercials and everywhere. It just makes commercial a whole lot better. I mean, Zach Braff and they're both funny, but that makes it a lot better.
Thank you.
The reason why we're chatting today is because on my channel here we talk about puppets and most importantly where those puppets are today. Any movie buff or movie geek or anybody that loves the world of entertainment, you always probably want to know, hey, I wonder where Indiana Jones' fedora is at, or I wonder where the DeLorean is from Back to the Future. A lot of times I know in the entertainment industry they make these things, they build these things, and then they throw them away to a junkyard. So I've always wondered for myself, I'm pretty sure I'm not the first one to do it, but I always wondered where those puppets are today as far as TV, film, and stuff like that. So I reached out to you because, as you know, some of my audience members were like, hey, we want to know where the Chowder puppets are that were used a little bit in the Chowder Cartoon Network series.
So I wasn't actually working for the company when they did Chowder. I came in about a year later. However, they were still talking about it, and I did see them at one point. So from my understanding, Cartoon Network or Warner Brothers is kind of fuzzy in that respect because they kind of shared the same offices. So I wasn't really sure what was what, but they bought them outright. I don't remember how much it was, but it was in the thousands of dollars. And after the end of that shoot, they went to the production staff and ended up in the offices of Cartoon Network or Warner Brothers. And they had a whole lobby area where they had like Flintstones cells and lunch boxes and things like that, toys, as well as the Teen Titans puppets and the Chowder puppets. I believe it was it's the big guy with Minestrone. Is that what? Gazpacho.
Yep.
Or was it Gazpacho?
Yep.
Okay.
I think so. We're both drawing a blank. Sorry. Yeah.
The guy. The big brown guy.
The big guy. Yeah.
He was in the lobby at that time, and so that was really the only one I saw. But from what I understand, they ended up on executive desks, or they ended up in storage, or they ended up in this front thing. And I think they rotated. They had Captain Caveman there as well, and Ricochet Rabbit.
Which I saw that you also built as well.
So BJ, they built those as well during that time. I actually was there in about 2012, 2013 when we shot the Teen Titans Go episode, and did a tour at that point, and that was when I saw them.
Gotcha.
So where they are 10 years later, who knows? But I'll talk a little bit about the way these things decompose over the years if they're not taken care of. And actually, you touched on it a little bit, but there is there's two ways of thinking about these things. One is the production; they want them done as fast as possible, and then once the shoot's over, they don't care, type of thing. And then there's the collector, which I kind of fall more into that area. It's like, oh, that belongs in a museum, or
Right,
that
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So a
They
lot
need
of
a jump
times
crazy. Yeah.
at the end of a shoot, it either gets thrown out, or if it's saved, it ends up on somebody's desk. And even then, like Jason Segel, he talks about he got the Muppet that was based on him from from
Man or a Muppet.
yeah, and he said it was on. Actually, it may not have been him. It might have been Elton John talking about this. He talked about how he got a Muppet that was based on him, and he had it on his piano in the sunlight, and it just fell apart.
Oh,
So and within a few years, it because the sun got to it. And a lot of those were sculpted out of foam. They don't have fabric on top of it, and the whole deal, so they don't last as long.
kind of. Would you say we're like made like kind of like Miss Piggy, how she's that foam
Yeah,
like
so there's a couple different ways that they did it. If it's a real quick puppet, sometimes they don't even flock it. It's just the raw foam, sometimes just dyed. You can see the scissor marks and the whole deal. And if it's just a one-off, that's usually what it is. Also, there's the moisture from your hand also will break it down. So if it doesn't have a lining and you're directly on the foam, then that eats it from the inside. So the Muppet builders, a lot of times they'll say, I don't know what the exact time period is. I have some puppets that are 20 years old. They're still okay. But I know with the heavy use and if they're not stored correctly and everything else, that they say they turn into toast.
right?
And
Oh yeah,
that's
the
when
whole
it
yep.
gets all crunchy inside. And I know that by the time they did Muppets from Space, 2005, 2000, it was like 2000-ish, right?
I think wait, 1990?
That might be right. Somewhere in there.
Something
In
around
the
there. Yeah.
90s somewhere. Yeah, 90s to early 2000s. They used the original Pigs in Space puppets on that in the crowd scene. They pulled them out
I
of
did not
storage.
know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That is
And
cool.
they said as soon as they put their hands in, they were just getting dust down in their eyes
Uh,
side. So
like
that was last. So they had
yeah,
to rebuild those after that. But I know that they survived at least that long because Henson tends to save everything as far as put it
right,
in storage and everything else. And they
right.
also let him out for the most part, not out into, I think, when they were originally doing the Muppet Show, the first few weeks, they did like Goldie Hawn and they did a couple other puppets, Marty Feldman, I think, they did puppets based on them. And then they would gift one of those to the star, but they stopped
Right.
doing that. Crazy.
Right. Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah. Can you everybody. Yeah. Building a puppet for it. Yeah. I
yeah,
could imagine.
yeah.
Another thing I was going to ask you too. I don't know if maybe you got some insight onto this. I was curious to find out that sometimes in like the museums, because a lot of stuff, and sometimes museums will say it and they won't, because they all cover like, oh, the like in the Museum of Moving Image or the puppetry for
Right.
puppetry for general art for in Atlanta. They'll do that. They'll display like a puppet character, but come to find out, I didn't know a lot of those are just sometimes they'll say it, sometimes they won't. They're photo puppets. So I was like,
Yeah, sometimes and actually, when you have a puppet that's just sitting on a stand, it has a tendency to look really dead. And so a lot of times they'll take the original puppet and they'll put wire into it to make an armature that will then be able to pose it. So it's kind of
gotcha.
like half and half. The other thing is if it's I'm sure you've seen, well, a good example, I think one of the few episodes of your podcast I've seen is the one about Dave Coulier's Mr. Woodchuck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And because the front of his face was all just sculpted foam, when the dog got it, it just
Boom.
did. Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing will happen over time with sunlight or, so a lot of puppets when they get in for restoration are already like the uh dark crystal puppets. I knew some people that were working on the restoration of those, and they said the fabrics were like paper. They would just like tissue paper. They would just you know come apart, and the skins, what were there, they would fill in, and then there's an application that they do to it to stabilize it, but it's no longer a
Gotcha.
puppet. It's just
Uh, the
where it's
glorified
at.
statue. Yeah.
Mhm. It's a sealing process, and it's probably something like urethane or something like that just keeps it from deteriorating anymore. So
Got you, got you. Well, that I'm just happy to hear again as well. Like I said again, this I'm happy to hear that they're still around, and even if they're a glorified statue form ish,
yeah,
I wish more would get saved. But like you said, with the industry, like you said, they're quickly, hey, we just need something to boom, boom, boom.
yeah.
Yeah, I get you, I get you.
Well, that's part of the problem too. Is like a lot of times they think, okay, the movie's over, we're never going to use this again. It's going to cost too much to store it. And
Right.
so like you see this in like Ghostbusters versus Ghostbusters 2, where 5 years later they had some of the props, they had to rebuild some of the props, they had to, and
True.
there's differences, and that's part of it too, is that it would have cost them how many millions of dollars to store that stuff for 5 years versus let's
Yeah.
several
Yeah. Let's
thousand.
just yeah, and remake it. Yeah. Well, it's weird now because it seems like a lot of fans with everything because even I was born in the late 90s, but grew up in like the 2000s, so I'm like in that time
Yeah, yeah,
period. So everybody is loving, like any childhood, everybody loves, their iconic childhood shows. So like
right.
Playhouse Disney, I know everybody loves, Bear in the Big Blue House. So trying to find those puppets has been a journey, but then as well as, they had park puppets made and and base and stuff like that, which are different from the show puppets.
Right.
So that was a challenge in itself because I'm getting asked, well, but where are the puppets in the park, versus the puppets in the show? So it's been a whole, yeah,
Well, that was a weird time too, because I know that there are some. What was that one with the? Was it Between the Lions?
yeah, mm-hmm,
So
yep,
Pam Orsino has one of those puppets,
yeah,
and I believe,
Leona,
yeah,
yeah,
and I believe they were maybe gifted or offered to be sold to certain puppeteers. So those things might actually. I think those will probably last longer than the ones that end up on somebody's desk because those aren't stabilized. They just basically give them to at the end to put on a stand, and that's it. That's
gotcha,
the end of that one.
gotcha,
Um,
gotcha.
and if they have a window office versus a interior office, it might last a little longer, but or a little less time.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah. Some I keep, and it seems like the recurring thing, whether it be on a TV show or a film. A friend was telling me that I guess for the Playhouse Disney show, or yeah, well, turn to Playhouse Disney Junior.
yeah, yeah.
For Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, they had the Mickey puppet, so I guess that was given to one of the executives, and I guess he's in an executive window at that Disneyland, and they said, yeah, he's looking kind of faded because he's
Yeah, kind of crunchy. So this little side thing is at one point I saw an ad for they had a live show at Disneyland, the Playhouse Disney show, and they were looking for puppeteers. And so I went in and I auditioned. I auditioned with about 150 other people. Now I was really new to I'd been building for about 10 or 15 years, but I hadn't actually puppeteered a whole lot. So I went in there and I did the whole deal and
right.
I got down to the third round, fourth
Mm,
round, something like that. It
mm,
got down to about 25 people. And then they ended up picking two. And it was right around that time that they were unionizing. So they just canceled the show. And then that was the end of that. But I did get to
gotcha,
put my hand up inside the puppets, which was interesting. Very heavy, very large, and they were solid. So they wouldn't break all the time.
gotcha.
But those were obviously different than the ones like they had. I don't know if they had bear, but they had the weasel. What are those things? The what
Oh,
the
Pip and Pop, Pip and
Pep and
Pop.
Pop. They had Pep and
Yeah.
Pop, and they had a couple others like that, which were probably 1-to-1 or pretty close to it. That they would use as part of the show. And then they had like a Goofy and a Donald and all that stuff. And they had some puppets. I can't remember what the characters were, but over the years, like one eye would have stopped working, and so you get these kind of weird
Mhm.
lazy eye things going when you use the blade.
He's right. He's right. He's Rocky Balboa.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
doing it, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So now, because you have, and again, if it's okay to say, I saw that you also worked. You and BJ Geyer have you guys built Chucky for the Universal.
Yeah, well, BJ did. I didn't work. I didn't work on that one. Again, I came in. I want to say about 2006,
Gotcha.
and they had just. I did see it. He had one in the office. But yeah, they built that, and they had to re-engineer it in such a way to take it from being an animatronic to. And it was
You
for the.
pop it.
It was for the Universal show. And what he would do is he'd pop up on a roof and he'd just yell at people. That was his whole thing. But they had to make the jaw bigger so that it would work as a puppet, and then they rotted the hands. And I think they actually took the body or the at least parts of the outfit from one of those Spirit
Chucky
Halloween
doll.
type.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, because we had a naked Chucky sitting around the office too. That they,
Yeah, like, he's naked. He's naked. Yeah.
yeah.
So how often does that happen as a puppeteer, puppet builder, that you guys get asked to do uh theme park?
Well, it's all a
build.
bidding thing. It's kind of like different. There are companies that exclusively do theme park stuff, and over the last few years, I know that they've upped the standards for how it can be built, fire retardant stuff, no off gassing of fumes and stuff, different things like
Gotcha.
that.
Right, right, right.
So there are the more specialty ones end up doing a lot more of those now. But back then it was we would bid with a bunch of other people, and whoever came in the lowest, or it's all built on relationships. If somebody
Gotcha.
worked with PJ 15 years ago, they go, "Oh, I know a puppet guy." I mean, that's how I
This
got
guy.
T-Mobile. That's how I got T-Mobile. Really, was that somebody remembered BJ, and he couldn't do it, so he said, "Hey, you want to do it?" I'm like, sure.
Grab
So,
Steve, get Steve. That's cool. That's
yeah,
cool. So word of mouth as well. That
yeah.
gotcha.
Word of mouth
Gotcha.
is really your bread and butter for this sort of business.
Cool. Cool, cool. Well, again, thank you for sharing that. That's my own
Yeah.
little insider baseball. So
Well, if any of
so
this
now
stuff can help in another video sometime down the line, that's great, because it's information that maybe I don't know the complete answer, but it might get you there. So
right. Now as far as the because we also talked about the Nike Kobe and LeBron puppets. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that was actually my first professional gig. So what happened was I had been building puppets of my own characters, and I did that for about 10 years. And then BJ saw them online, and he brought me in and he said, "Hey, how did you learn?" And I was like, "I figured it out myself." And he said, "You're about 90% of the way there. Why don't you come in, rebuild one of your characters, and I'll show you how to fix the things that aren't working." Oh, okay, great. So I
Gotcha.
did that. And during that time, he got hired by Legacy to work on the second season of the Kobe and LeBron MV Puppet, I think it was MV Puppets commercials. And they had built a year before, I think Dave Barclay had built the first three of those, which
Gotcha.
were, it was Kobe, LeBron, and then BJ had an old Crane Kinker puppet that he made Little Dez out of. And that was kind of where that came from. So they
Gotcha.
were
Gotcha.
very popular, and they said they're going to do a second season. So now we're going to make a new batch of all these, as well as add about 6 or 7 other characters to it. So
Like the referees and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. So BJ said, "Hey, you know how to draw, right?" Talking to me. And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I'm always getting these graphic designers that make beautiful artwork that can be, can the client loves, but I can't get my hand up inside. So since I know how to build and draw, could I design these puppets?" And so I was brought into to Legacy, and I started drawing, probably 150 drawings a day.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, just because I'm a very fast artist, draw really fast. And so I would draw them, I'd put them up, and they'd say, "Okay, I like that, I like the head there," and then make another batch. And I just do this day on and day in and day out, and then different outfits, and then different designs of it, and based on different people, and
Wow.
like Beyonce at the time.
Mhm.
And there's another character based on Earthquake, which I don't remember what he was kind of the generic. He was the exec. He was the police chief. He was the Santa Claus. They were all based on that one thing. And then I had a bunch
Gotcha.
of blanks that were based on other people. And that would be how I would do it. It would be like, oh, okay, this is in my mind this character, how to make a puppet out of it. And I also
Gotcha.
trying to keep it not Muppety. That was the thing. Is like you want to have remind you of the Muppets, but not look like a Muppet. And
That's
so
a challenge. Yeah.
yeah, so
That's
there's different design things that you do. Um, with my own personal puppets, I do something different with the tongues, and the eyes are a little different. My eyes tend to be a lot bigger than most other people's, which I like that. So
which is it stands out. You're like, I know
yeah,
when you see
yeah,
one of your
yeah.
characters.
And so Crank had the black lines around it, which the Muppets didn't have. And then that Avenue Q ended up having that kind of as well.
Gotcha.
Um, Trying to think of some other things that the uvula in the Muppets is kind of their thing. They can sue if you
Yeah.
put
Oh
the
yeah.
uvula in.
Yeah. That. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. I can. Yeah.
yeah.
That's that. Even when you say it, you can just like kind of picture it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so anyway, they brought me in. I designed all the background characters, and then saw them rebuild all the first characters. They needed 3 duplicates of each one.
Gotcha.
And this is a little tip for all you builders out there. um, there's an order of operations that you do when you build these things. So you could use the same pattern, and you could glue it in a certain order, and it'll get a different head shape than if you glue it in a different order. So that was one of the things that Dave Barclay was talking about a lot was that there was an order. You do it this piece, then this piece, then this piece, and then you put it all together. Otherwise, it makes a thinner head or a thicker head based on
Or
how you do
something
it.
like off. It's like off.
Yeah.
It's tweaking. Yeah.
So I mean, that was something that was something that I didn't realize, and I try to always build kind of in the same order from that point, just so I know 15 years down the line, if I had to rebuild this character, I'll do it in the same order, and it'll
You could.
yeah.
Yeah, I get you. That's cool. And then with that, so do they give you guys like, or like, do they leave that up to you guys, or you guys just have a set pattern that you guys have copied?
So they had so that's another thing is that the builders, sometimes the companies, I'm sure that like if you build something for Henson, they own the pattern. But if you're a freelancer or whatever, those patterns are yours unless they buy them from you.
Yeah.
And so they were still part of, I think, Dave's original, and then BJ had the original for his, and so they came back and built three more. And they had the originals on the wall of Legacy. They were actually in the lobby in pose form with a basketball, and they had to pull them off the wall so that they could rebuild these. Sorry,
You're good. You're good.
and the reason why they had duplicates is so that they could do quick outfit changes, and also they would do this thing called the Texas switch, where the one would pop up and then it would pop down and then pop up over here.
Boop, boop, boop.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep,
So
yep.
they did a lot of that. But anyway, so they had three of each of those characters, and then the background characters I think had one. But once that was over, after the filming, they ended up in I think those ones on the wall went back on the wall. There might have been a set that went to some executives, who knows? But there was at least one complete set of them in banker boxes in Legacy. They had a whole overhead. It looked like the end of Indiana Jones, with all these boxes.
All the crates in the
Every
air.
project, one Tony Stark's armor, next to Arnold Schwarzenegger's head,
You guys got all over
yeah,
yeah.
and there were, I believe at the time that I saw them last, there were 6 or 7 boxes, banker boxes, full of these puppets and
Wow.
props.
Wow.
And then a couple years later, when Kobe retired, they did prior to him dying, but they retired. They did another set of commercial memories of Kobe and all his things, and they brought those puppets out and they shot for a couple days.
That's so cool.
I
That's
didn't
so
actually get to shoot on that. I wasn't SAG, so I didn't get allowed on set. But I worked separately with the build team, and then a couple weeks later they brought me back with the outfit design thing, and I did hundreds of drawings for them of them in different outfits so they could kind of get their wardrobes together.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Man,
But that got me up to the next level. Yeah. For the longest time, I would say I was at the top of amateur or the bottom of professional, right in that sweet spot. But yeah.
And I would say this expert, and then they're challenging you as, like you said, a cartoon, a cartoonist and then a puppeteer. So they're like, here you go, here's a challenge, yeah. And you knocked it out of the park. You knocked it out of the park.
There is a translation. This is Maybury. This is my cartoon character. Okay, is Maybury the puppet? So you see that there's similarities; they're recognizable, but you have to make allowances for the mouth and stuff to actually make him work. And again, this was built in 2012, so
he looks amazing.
He's holding up, but you can see the top of his antenna are starting to come through. So I got to rebuild those. But yeah, he's got it, but he's got a bigger mouth, just so he can manipulate. He's got the Frozen outfit. So basically, all his expression is happy, sad, through wonder, kind of awe. That's about all he can do. Whereas I can draw him to do just about anything. And so a lot of times when people are doing, I'm just gonna have him dead in the back there. When they're designing, they'll make the necks too small. They'll make the mouth small. They won't think about that. So I always try to, since he was a cartoon character, I got stuck with his design. But it's all about it's all about what is most important. For the longest time, I was trying to keep this neck really small, and so the heads would get bigger and bigger because my neck, the arm was that. So I ended up with a head that was probably 18 inches around. It was huge. And you couldn't get it in shot. It was awful. It was really hard to manipulate. It was really heavy. And then after a while, I was like, nobody cares about that neck. It doesn't really matter. So that's how he got to the size he is now. But yeah,
lot of trial and error,
a lot of trial and error, a lot of just kind of, you learn something on everything you build, and then it just goes to the next one, and you have to be open. Like, I don't really like when I see these tutorial people online who basically this is the way you do it. You do it this way, because there's 100 ways to do everything, and it's kind of this toolbox that you get to each one.
My dad will be super happy to know that you said that, because he's kind of like we're partners in crime as far as puppet building. So he'll be happy to know that he's like, see, he said it.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to do it, and it's true. There's no right or wrong way, especially, well, I guess if you're trying to, like, if you're trying to like replicate a character, I can imagine that guy, because you're trying to get it like sort of exact. That's the only thing I can see.
Strange Pork replica.
That's so cool.
This started out as a class I was doing, and I was teaching people how to make cuts to foam to make different head shapes. And as I was doing it, made like 3 cuts. I'm like, this is starting to look like Strange Pork, and so I started making. He's built entirely different than the way the real one is. It's all flat foam. It's all seamed and glued, and it's got a fleece covering on it. The original was a big block of foam, probably upholstery foam, or something soft, that was then carved with a razor till it got to and scissors, and then flocked. So I mean, he's totally different, but he works for me. He uses the techniques that I've got. Things are done a little differently than I did on the other other puppets. I'd never done removable arm rods over all these years. I'd never done that, so I put them on this because I couldn't figure out how to sew the spandex and allow for a permanent rod.
Right.
But he's got his faults, but everybody knows who he is.
He looks phenomenal. He looks phenomenal. I can't even tell. Even if you told me, this and that, and I'd be like, no, he looks great. He looks amazing.
The thing is like, it used the skills that I had put together or that I had learned about. There's this kind of idea in the replica groups where you want to do it exactly the way. And I understand that. I mean, you want it to be exactly the way it is. I just built a Swedish chef replica, and one of the comments somebody said when I did it was, the hands are wrong. Well, of course they're wrong. You're not going to have live hands on a poser. You gotta do something.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's kind of one of these things, like, you do it. I think that most important is performability and aesthetics, I guess, would be probably the two. You want to make sure that you can make the expressions if you're using as a puppet. If it's a poser, then you just want it to look the best.
Right. Yeah.
You can be made out of lead for all I care.
Is that Short Circuit? Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny 5. And it's all built the way I build. It's out of foam. It's like, you just think, and he's got, I don't know if I can hook it up, but he's got one of those light bar, those stereo, those light bar things that you'd get for like stereos or whatever. I put that in there, and it's voice activated, so you can kind of make it work. And
that's so cool.
He has a string on here that doesn't work really, but his eyebrows will go down, and I got to a point with it, and I got stuck, and I haven't touched it since, and I still get emails from people like, when are you going to finish Johnny 5? And again, that's built totally different than the way the real one was, but it was kind of like, how do you do it?
But it looks just like, for me, it looks just like it. I didn't know it was,
it's quite a bit smaller than the real one, but it's supposed to be puppet. I mean, I was doing this thing. I was going to do this thing with AI characters doing art, and that was
pretty
part
cool.
of that. And so I built like Data, and I built C-3PO, and I built
My hat goes off to you guys. You can make mud out of a mountain.
Well, it's something that I got from my mom. She does this thing, and I picked it up when I was a kid from her. She can see an object and say, that looks like that. When we do our Halloween costumes, she say, okay, I want to be such and such characters. Like, we can make out of this and this and this, and she put them together and make a Halloween. And I use that a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
you can.
I can't tell you how many times I bought some hunk of junk because it was the right shape for something else.
Hey, that's like that, right? That's how the Millennium Falcon was made. So
exactly. So let me. This is another prop. This is something BJ built, actually. It was for It's all foam and it's shoelaces here, but we used it for a American Greetings ad, and when it was over, I was able to get it. But you can kind of see it. He built it in like an hour, hour and a half, and it's
Wow.
just
Wow.
painted foam. It has a couple of rods up through it just to keep it stiff. But this thing is L200, and it's lasted. We shot that thing in about 2008, and it's just been sitting on a shelf in the sun, and it's still doing fine. This is a C3PO that I
Oh,
built for
that
the
is
thing,
cool.
and
Oh,
he's got,
that's cool.
you know, he's just a bunch of found objects and foam that makes this character, and he's been a fun one. Which, like, it started right around COVID, and so this is the top off of one of those handy wipes
Yeah, yeah,
containers, and then
yeah,
these
yeah.
are drains out of at PVC pipe drains from Home
Oh yeah.
Depot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow,
Yeah, so
that
yeah,
rock.
so it's stuff like that.
The Glee, because I know you said you kept the Glee puppets, but
I
then you
kept the
also,
Glee Puppets. So what happened was, this is a problem with the industry. I won't name names, but I'll tell you, the problem with the industry is some companies don't pay the last payment. And so we'll finish a job and then we'll never see that money. And so BJ was like, "Well, is there anything around the shop that you want?" I said, "Like that, those Glee puppets, because those are the ones I designed, and I got a bandsaw, and that was kind of my payment for
there you go.
that thing."
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah,
so anyway,
yeah.
so I had those Glee puppets. Now the way the Glee puppets work is they rented them. Is we had an option. They could buy them outright for an X amount of dollars, and for significantly less, they could order it. They could rent it for their rights to it for 2 years, and then after that, they became our property. And
Gotcha.
so 20th Century Fox said, "Oh, no, no, we want to buy them, but we only have the money in the budget to rent them at this point. So we'll get back to you after 2 years. And if we don't want them, the actors will want them." And so 2 years go by, we contacted them. None of the actors wanted it. 20th Century Fox didn't want it anymore. And so they were having an auction of all the Glee props, and um, uh, it was either Heritage Auctions or Hollywood Treasures. One of those guys was having an auction. And so we put up all the Glee puppets as part of that auction. And the only ones that sold were Blaine and Kurt and Adam Lambert. Those are the only three that sold. The rest of them went back to us. BJ gave Mr. Schuster to one of the guys at the auction house because he liked him so much. So that's where that one went. I took Marley, Kitty, Artie, because I built that wheelchair, so I wanted that one. Artie and um what was Ryder? Ryder was the last one. So I had those 4 puppets. BJ kept the rest of them. I know that I forget the guy's name. Was it Jacob? Was Puck's half brother? Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
that one got crushed in shipping, so that one doesn't exist anymore. Okay.
Mm.
3 Unique and Santana, and what was the other one? Might have been Rachel. Got converted into fairies for a Kid Cudi video, and I just saw Becky recently. It was on a shoot. He had redressed her as an elf. So
Mm.
so anyway, these things and the rest of them, I know that Sam and a couple of the others are still in BJ's daughter's room.
Oh wow.
So, but I was able to sell the 4 that I had on another auction, and I was able to get a little bit more than they would have been if I had been paid out originally. So it was a good investment, but I had to keep them out of the sun for 4 years or whatever it was. So.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Right. You're like no sunlight, no sunlight. They're like
But
gremlins.
I didn't want them to. So one of the practices too is, and I kind of touched on a little bit, is that when you're on a deadline and a puppet is no longer usable because you can't reuse, say, Rachel in a video,
Right.
it's a lot easier to reskin it as a new puppet. So a lot of times the skins get pulled off, they are recovered and redone, and then it becomes a new puppet. And so that's what happened to about a third of them as well. So
Wow. I did. Yeah. Did not know
yeah.
that either.
I
Wow. So
can't
now.
remember the one. There was one. It was a green puppet. It might have been the Adam Lambert puppet, and we reskinned that for something. And I was like, "We're saving this, or we're putting it back?" Because we were still in the shop. I'm like, "That one's going to be worth something. Let's put it back together." So we did. And Marley also didn't get reskinned, but she got redressed, and I put her back to normal too. before the sale. So
Gotcha.
again, it was a lot of like I'm more on the fan side in a lot of ways. So I'm like, that belongs in a museum type of
Right.
stuff. I
Right.
mean, there's
Right.
certain
Yep.
ones that, like we actually made the principal, who at that time was a janitor in that episode, and we had built a puppet of him, and almost got it done. We didn't have his hair on, and he didn't have his nose on. Everything else was done. He had the outfit, and so we started calling him Voldemort
Mhm.
because he
It's a Voldemort puppet. It's a Voldemort puppet.
yeah.
Yeah.
And BJ was always like, I'm going to make Voldemort out of that thing. I'm going to actually do the whole. I was like, and I don't know what happened to that one. There's a lot of puppets. There's a lot of puppets that never like get made and then shot and then cut out of things too. There was a Burger King Burger King commercial that BJ did. He did it with Legacy. I don't know what he was a puppet. The director wanted a puppet in it, and they ran it for Super Bowl. And then Burger King said, we want the puppet out. So they edited the puppet out, and it was only in that first couple of broadcasts of it. And so for whatever reason, um, that puppet really never saw the light of day, even though it was filmed and the whole deal. Who knows what happened?
Gotcha.
Probably Legacy still.
Now, with a puppet like the puppet character for Honey, like the Honey ad,
Yeah.
now how does that work? Do you also get to keep something like that, or you said it just depends on the contract?
So that one was my first solo build. So they contacted me. I built it. I gave them a real good deal. Yeah. So I gave them a real good deal. I've never been in SAG, so I do all non-union stuff. I would love to get in SAG. If they want to hire me, they
You're
want
like,
to.
I'll take it.
I'm out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I was eligible for a while, but I ended up not getting it. But it was a non-SAG thing, and they told me it was only for the internet, and so I did it for the internet and got paid X amount of dollars. And what am I going to do with this thing? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll give you the puppet as well. I kept the patterns. I could make another one if I really wanted to.
Right.
But in fact, I still use some of the offcuts for other things. You have to dye the fleece, and you have to dye everything. So I just built a dragon puppet out of some stuff that I had left over from that honey puppet. But they ended up with that, and then I guess it did so well online. Like 6 months later, I got this call, and like, hey, I saw your honey puppet on X and Sex show, and I go, what? And I started looking, and they actually started running it as a TV commercial, and I
Wow,
didn't get any pay. I didn't get any pay for it because of
I
not
did
getting
to say, yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
got it. Well, see, you do such a good job. You do such a good
Thank you.
job that it lives on. It lives on and
Yeah,
on and
yeah.
on and on. That's
And
cool.
it has a
Well,
pattern right here. I can show you.
you're like, here, look, see, yeah, no, no, but that is awesome and not awesome at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, it's kind of one of those things, like especially when you're a puppeteer or a puppet builder or whatever. Builders don't get residuals, but performers do. So that's why a lot of the different builders get themselves in there as a puppeteer on these things, so they can get a
gotcha.
piece of the pie.
Get the end. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's uh, I was not SAG on one job. I can't remember. I was Teen Titans. I was the only non-SAG puppeteer on Teen Titans. I did Cyborg. I was a puppeteer on Cyborg,
Very
and
cool.
it's my only on-screen performance too, because there's a gag where you can see my hands, and those are my hands.
You're like, see, these are my hands.
Yeah. I can see his hands.
Yeah. See?
So
Like,
yeah, and they didn't want to use me. They were like, "Oh, we'll do a buyout. We'll pay you X amount, no residuals." And BJ and the other puppeteers fought for me because they knew I was doing as much as they were, that he should get the waiver. So they went in the morning. They did. They got me the waiver. They got me day rate, and I want to say I've made about another $4,000 over the years off of residuals of that episode of. I only have two credits: Glee and Teen Titans, and I've gotten more off of Teen Titans than I did off of Glee. So.
that's sad. That's so sad. You think it'd be, or at least both.
Well,
But
it's half and half. I mean, honestly, the performer is, probably 75 to 90% of what people remember, but without the puppet, they don't. They.
It's kind of like,
But again, costumers don't get residuals. The lighting guy doesn't get residuals. So I guess
True. Yeah, yeah. But like I said, it's weird how that stuff will last forever. Or or if the right people take care of it,
Yeah,
that stuff will last
yeah.
forever. I have one last thing, and I promise I'll let you go because I know you're busy.
If
So
you're wondering, honey was delivered to honey offices. As far as I know, it's still there. So
gotcha.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Got fingers
yeah.
crossed. Fingers
Might
crossed.
contact them to see if they still have it on a shelf somewhere. But yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like you gotta have it. You gotta have it. So now as far as like we said, since you're like it belongs in the museum, we both agree
yeah.
about that little statement there. And I know that can like you said that can with the industry's funny.
Yeah.
Do you see or do you foresee more commercial based puppets and stuff that like you've worked on like the Nike puppets and because as it has like a pop culture following for a time. Do you see stuff like that being more offered in museums or part of exhibits and things like that? I know they're not Muppet related, but like for
Uh,
the Center for Puppetry Arts and stuff like that, did you see,
some if they have it if the puppeteer has a relationship with the Center for Puppetry Arts, there's a good chance they could end up there. Okay, but I'll tell you where they most likely will end up is on those auctions, the Hollywood auctions, because there is a market for that, and a lot of the builders and studios are starting to realize that. And you're seeing stuff from Batman and Ghostbusters and Star Wars even showing up on those auctions now,
right?
because you know there is a thing. The problem with that is they get locked in some rich person's private office or
Yeah,
studio or on display, and they're never seen by
the
anybody. Well,
public. Yeah,
they go for auction again. The good news is, and the greatest thing about those auctions is they take really good pictures of them, and they're great reference pictures for us, replica people. Um,
gotcha.
and so, I mean, uh, it's better than ending up in a dumpster. I mean, I don't know if you've
True.
seen this. I've looked for pictures of it because I saw it one time and I remember it. There were pictures of they built like almost a full scale Millennium Falcon for Empire Strikes Back. Like it
I
was
did.
on set, yeah, on set Millennium Falcon. Yeah, I think it was 7/8 scale, so it was
Wow.
huge
Wow.
on
Yeah.
set. They could move it around on cast on I've heard air, but probably casters from place shot to shot. They would move it and then they would build the set around it. So it was pretty much in the same place that it was in the hangar that it was is on inside the slug. They just built the set around it because it was so huge.
Right.
Afterwards, there's pictures of pieces of Millennium Falcon in a car junkyard. Like,
Uh,
because what are you going to do with it? And then they
yeah. Yeah.
each movie. I mean, it wasn't the same one that was on Star Wars. That one was already in a dumpster somewhere. So they built it
True.
for Empire, then they dumpstered it, and then they built it part of it, Return of the Jedi. I think probably the mentality now is probably the latest 7, 8, and 9. That was all the same Millennium Falcon. They knew they were doing three more, so they just put it in
Gotcha.
storage.
They're like, yeah, yeah, we'll hold on to it. We'll keep it.
Yeah,
Or
I will hold
I
on
guess
to
they
it.
could they could use the one that's at Disney sitting there in
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Galaxy's
exactly.
Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sad. But no, I mean,
I think probably there is a framework in place where at least more of the props will survive, or the puppets will survive.
gotcha.
Um, again, there's a whole thing tied up with IP, intellectual property of, and that was what I had happen with T-Mobile, is because I quoted them a rental price because I didn't think they were on a budget, they were on a time crunch. Those things were built in 33 hours. I got the
Wow.
call Wednesday and I delivered them on Friday. And they I said, well, the rental price is this for another $2,000. You can own them. Okay, yeah, we'll take the rental price. Okay, get it. Started working on it. I get this angry call from their PR, from their lawyer. Like, you can't have those things. You can't have them because they're intellectual property of the actors. I'm like, well, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to do something else with them. Like,
Yeah.
my plan would be either I would sell them on a uh, an auction site in a couple of years, or I would reskin them as something else, or they'd just be part of my little collection. No,
Yeah.
you can't have
Yeah.
them. I can't believe you're trying to pull this and this. I was like, I'm not trying to pull anything. I gave them the offer to buy them outright, but they took the lower price. Oh, okay. So they paid me and then they owned them. And I believe those two ended up with the actors. I think they gave them to the actors. So
I mean, cool. And then again, yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah. It's like, I mean, it's crazy that they're trying to get mad at you. You're like, well, what? Yeah, like you said, you're like, what really am I gonna do with them? And
yeah,
your track record, it's not like you're some fan that just,
yeah.
your track record of being in the industry, you think they would, I don't know, I
I
don't know.
mean, I know that you remember the Buffy episode or Angel episode where they built the puppet of, yeah. So the builder for that ended up with one of the originals of that puppet, and he still had it for the longest time. And he tried to license it, but they wouldn't let him. License out a replica of it. They wouldn't let him.
Right,
They had the
right,
smaller replica that was based on that one, but it was a lot of. It had to be a poser, had to be smaller, had to do the whole deal. So
gotcha.
I mean, some people do hold on to these things, but again, you can't do anything with them. You can't display them. You can't show them. So
Right. You got to keep them. You got to keep them in
yeah,
your own little private. Yeah, that's a that. And I mean, that's a catch-22 because
yeah,
yeah, if you're and and half the time too, fans, as you know, fans will take better care of that item
hmm
than the company will. And I get why, but like you said, with intellectual property, you don't want
hmm
someone running around there with a Cookie Monster or
they also
permit.
go through a lot of abuse. At the beginning of a production, they look a little different than at the end of the production.
And they're all fire
That's
burned and
why you have
sprayed.
4 or 5 Kermits on a shoot, so that they always look pristine and they can be refurbished or whatever.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of people um, would be a little disappointed by what things look like in real life sometimes. That's not right.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It came right off the set.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And then some people might like that.
like this is Eddie. This is the character I built for myself.
And
Looks better now than he did when I built him 3 years ago because as the fur gets crazier and crazier, it looks more and more real like a dog. And so there's that too. It's like it may be built from the same patterns, it may be built from the same stuff, but it may not look right because it hasn't gone through the wear and tear that you're used to.
right, right.
Uh,
It's
Gonzo,
too pretty. Yeah.
Gonzo
Yeah.
deteriorates because so much of his nose and face is just raw foam. And I have this to show you. Okay, so this is Eddie's skull. Okay, out of reticulated foam. This is the same foam exposed to the elements, but is like 8 years older. So
Wow.
you can see this
Yeah.
is
Yep.
maybe a
Yep.
year
Yep.
old,
Yep.
and this is let's see, I built this in 2012, so 10 years or 12 years older, or 10 years older than this one, basically. And it's just, it's still flexible. It's still working a puppet, but you can see
Yeah.
how much just being in sunlight or exposed to the air or the moisture. I mean, this is the same head. I was building two of the same puppet. I never finished either
Mhm.
one of them, but he's still, you can still use them. They're
Yeah.
good.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for sharing with me and the audience all your wisdom and all your puppet, just little tips and tricks and things like that. I personally did not know that, so I'm a little selfish. This was honestly just for me. So it's like a little Christmas present, but also for the audience too, who either doesn't know about puppetry or maybe is wondering the same thing as
Yeah.
as everybody else is. So
Well, when
thank
I
you.
when I started, there was so little information out there. There's a lot more information now than there was when I started. I started building in '94, so that was when I first started building. And I knew nothing. I could get something out of a book, maybe 2 pages of a book, and then I find another book that had 2 more pages that were good. And I had this whole library.
Good library.
Now through Adam Krudinger and other people online, you can learn a lot to get you started.
Right.
I always say after they take my class, they're about 10 years into my career because of all the stuff that I've learned in that first
You're
10
like,
years.
you're ahead of me. You're ahead of me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have an audience right here. So if anything you want to promote, any upcoming projects or anything like that, you have an audience.
Well, probably the only thing, if you want to follow me on Instagram at Puppet Troop, that's PUPPETTROOP. That's probably the best way to keep in contact with me as far as what I'm building. I'm very sporadic, but then when I do, I show like every step of the way what I'm working on. I don't have anything coming up other than I'm writing a little play that hopefully I'll do for Fringe. We'll see.
Well, hey, well, I will look forward to that. I have your links and everything like that in the
Yeah,
description below.
cool.
And again, man, I can't thank you enough. Seriously, thank you so much for taking the time out. I appreciate it. And again, thank you. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, as well as Steve, and go check out the next one right here on the screen. I think you'll enjoy it, and we'll see you over there. Until next time, take care and well, have an awesome day.